Shalom, privyet, salut tout le monde, and welcome. Today we're going to talk about Christ, the enemy of Jewish rabbis, because, well, I mean, what's happening is you're getting a lot of people, and you should know what camp they're coming out of, people that are making ridiculous comments, very, very ignorant people, saying you worship a Jewish rabbi. You literally worship a rabbi. So a lot of it's coming from the pagan camp, and we have to make sure that we have a rebuttal to this, that we can argue this. Because to call Jesus a rabbi is like calling Martin Luther a pope. You know, the guy who rose up against the pope, started the Protestant Reformation, divided, from the Catholic Church, became the enemy of the Catholic Church. That's like calling him the Pope. Jesus literally fought the rabbis. The rabbis were Jesus' enemy. And what's happening today is, what I notice is people will, call you a Jew, or, you worship a Jew, you worship a Jewish rabbi, this kind of stuff. Guys, they couldn't even define what a rabbi is. These people couldn't define what is a Jew if their life depended on it. They have no idea what they're talking about. So you can't call Jesus a rabbi. So we're going to go through the Bible, and we're going to look at some history, all right? And we're going to ask, what is a rabbi? Now, this word rabbi, okay, it comes from, it's not in the Old Testament, okay? And it comes from this Hebrew word rab, or rav, which just means great, mighty, or many. And when you add the suffix I to it, well, now it's going to be like my master or my great one. Okay, so in simple terms, rabbi literally means maybe my Lord, and in proper context, you could say my teacher. And we're going to see that in the Greek. So the title never appears once in the Old Testament. Think about this. Jesus is a rabbi. The term rabbi doesn't appear in the Old Testament. It is not, if you were to use this word with in the Old Testament and go back in time and say this to Moses would have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Okay, it's an invented term, okay, from a new religion. So not a single prophet or priest in the Old Testament was ever called rabbi. Okay, the title emerges only during the late Second Temple period, roughly in the 1st century BC or the 1st century AD, and is found in rabbinic and Aramaic writings like the Mishnah and Talmud long after the close of the Hebrew canon. Okay? It has nothing to do with Moses or the Old Testament. It is a new invention. And this is going to prove that Judaism is an invented religion. It's a new religion that fights against the Old Testament. It's in opposition to Moses. So the claim that's being made here is that that the Jews invented the Old Testament. Okay, they invented Moses, they invented all this stuff, and then they invented Talmudic Judaism to fight themselves, and then they created Christianity to fight themselves again. Right? It's insane. It's crazy. So the Talmudic Judaism is to fight against Moses. They're in contrast. They're not together. Christianity is the fulfillment of Moses. Okay, does that make sense? All right. So rabbi is a post-biblical invention born in the age of the Pharisees, not in the days of Moses. All right. So the word rabbi, so in Hebrew, it's going to come from this word rav or rab. Okay, and in a sense, there's a couple different ways you can look at this word. And now here we've got rabbi, but what do you notice about this word rabbi? It's in Greek, see? And all that it can do is point at this word in Hebrew, rav, which does not mean rabbi, does not mean teacher, has nothing to do with that. Okay, so an example of the word rav, so here, Nebuzaradan, the captain, see, do you notice how it says captain here? Okay, so this captain of Babylon, so actually let's look at this Daniel. So here we have this word many, rav. So it could be great, it could be many. So when it's saying the rav of the captain of the guard, you can the best way to translate that into English would be to say captain. He's the mighty one, the many of the strong one of the guard. Okay, and so in English we can just translate that as captain. That's how we would understand it. Okay, but that's all this word Rav means, and it's not until you add that suffix I that now it's going to become rabbi, great one, teacher, mighty one. Okay, and it's only going to really show up in the New Testament. Why is that? Because rabbinic Judaism didn't exist until the New Testament, okay, the time of Jesus. So here we've got this, so let's read this in John, 1 John 38. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and saith unto them, What seek you? They said unto him, Rabbi. And now rabbi, now John has to explain what rabbi means, which is to say, being interpreted, master. Okay, so here's this Greek word, and this is the word for doctor. Okay, didaskalos. So this, which in a sense it means master in Greek. It's like if you get your PhD, your doctorate in, it could be anything. It could be history, could be medicine, whatever. What you become a doctor. You become a didaskalos. Okay. You're now a master in that subject, okay? A doctor, in a sense, is a master who can now be a teacher. Does that make sense? It's like apprentice, an electrician, and then he becomes a master, and then he can take on apprentices and be a teacher, okay? That's all this term really means. Now, so here we've got the word rabbi and what it means in Greek, teacher, and it's pointing us back to this word Rav in Hebrew. But the question is, why does the word rabbi only appear in the New Testament and not in the Old Testament? Okay? So, this is called the Great Inversion. And what the Great Inversion is when the temple was destroyed the first time and the Jews, Levites, and whatever remnant of Israel was with them, they went into Babylonian captivity. Okay, so they're now slaves in Babylon. And the priesthood kind of fell. And there was no more Levitical priesthood running things. The temple was destroyed. And so what seems to have emerged is rabbinical Judaism. It seems to maybe have started in Babylon. This is the best guess we have. We don't really know where it came from. It appears between the destruction of the first temple and the Levitical Hasmonean dynasty. So what's going to happen is the Levites were the tribe of Israel, and they were promised to be the priests and teachers of the law, of the Torah. And then you got Judah, who was promised, right, the scepter, the king. Okay, so the tribe of Levi was chosen to be the priests and teachers of Israel. Okay, and they shall teach Jacob your judgments and Israel your law. Okay. And the tribe of Judah was chosen to produce kings. The scepter shall not depart from Judah until the Messiah comes. Okay, that's what it says actually. So God decreed Levi would teach his law. Judah would rule as kings. So what happens? This was the divine balance. Levi taught, Judah ruled. But after Babylonian exile, that order was broken. The priesthood became corrupted by political power. And new laymen, the scribes and Pharisees, set themselves up as interpreters and enforcers of God's law. Okay, so rabbinic Judaism, as we know it today, did not reach institutional maturity until after the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 A.D. With the priesthood abolished and sacrificial worship no longer possible, the Pharisaic emphasis on the oral law became the foundation for a new model of Jewish authority. This shift marked a radical transformation. Judaism transitioned from a temple-centered priestly system to a text-centered rabbinic one. Okay, as a result, contemporary Judaism bears little resemblance to the religious and landscape of Judah before the temple's fall. It is the product of survival, adaptation, and reinvention, I guess. That's the best way I think you can put it. So what happened was the Levites, the guys who were entrusted to be the priests and high priests and the lawgivers, really. The lawyers, in a sense, the administrators of the country, they stole the throne. After the Maccabean revolt, they didn't look for among the tribe of Judah to look for the next king of David, son of David that can rule. They crowned themselves kings. And after they crowned themselves kings, they broke the law. They broke the prophets. They broke what God said. And so, who are they now to judge Jews who want to teach? Okay, so now you're going to have these rabbinic schools where anyone can be a teacher, not a Levite. Levites are too busy LARPing around as kings, not doing their jobs as priests. They still ran the priesthood. That's how corrupted they were. They were now kings and priests, ruling both. And so it was during this time that the school of the Pharisees rose to power, okay, while the Levites were LARPing as kings. So Jesus versus the rabbis, okay. The entire New Testament records this struggle, not between Jesus and the laws of Moses and the law of Moses, but between Jesus and those who had replaced it. Very important that the entire New Testament is literally a record of Jesus' struggle against Jews who had corrupted the laws of Moses, okay, invented their own religion. Okay, it's Moses versus the Mishnah, okay? Prophets versus Pharisees, covenant versus commentary, okay? So he accused the Pharisees of making God's word of none effect through their traditions, okay? And Mark 7:13. He exposed their extra biblical laws, Sabbath limits, ritual washing, Corban vows, the endless tithes as burdens laid upon the people that neither they nor their fathers could bear. He warned his disciples, be not called rabbis, okay? For one is your rabbi, even Christ. Christ literally commands us in the New Testament not to be called rabbi. So here all these people are calling Christ rabbi, rabbi, rabbi. He's not a rabbi. He is fighting the rabbis, which is an invented religion, an invented title that doesn't exist anywhere in the Old Testament, okay? Okay, so what unfolds across the gospel is not merely the story of redemption, it is also a record of theological war. That's what the New Testament is. Okay? The New Testament is, at its core, the chronicle of Christ's battle with the newly invented Jewish religion, a system that claimed Moses' seat, but had long since abandoned Moses' faith. Where the rabbis built fences around the law, Jesus tore them down and brought the people back to God himself. Okay, that's how I would sum up. Now, you know, the whole redemption, the resurrection, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like God tells the ending from the beginning. It begins with the Israelites being enslaved by Pharaoh, their story, and the coming of the law of Moses, and then the plagues and the destruction of Egypt as God liberates slaves from Egypt. And then at the end of the story, it's the opposite. The Jews are now the new pharaohs. They're the ones LARPing around, claiming to speak for God, okay? And they're the ones who have now enslaved the world. That's why Jesus went into the temple, overthrew the tables of the money changers, violently threw these people out of the temple. The whole New Testament is Christ fighting rabbinic, Talmudic, Pharisaic Jews. The same Jews we're dealing with today. The same Jews, the same sect. Okay? So it baffles me that people are calling Jesus a rabbi. Rabbi Yeshua, you believe in a Jewish rabbi, oy vey. And it's like, guys, did you read the New Testament? The whole New Testament is Christ fighting these guys, calling them out on their nonsense, all the stuff they invented that's not in the Old Testament, like the word rabbi. Okay? So the next thing, too, is defining what is a Jew. And it's like, you're Jewish if your mother is. And it's like, where does it say that? Like, where... It baffles me. It drives me crazy that, if you have a Jewish parent, Jewish through your mother, you're automatically a Jew. And 99% of the world thinks that. And what they're doing is they're quoting Talmudic law. Okay, great. Now that's a man-made religion. That is something that you can't go to the Bible and prove that. You can't go to the Old Testament and prove that law. So people are going to quote laws that the Pharisees invented to prove certain things about being Jewish. Okay? And so we need to understand that Judaism is a religion of converts. No different than Christianity. Just like how Jews had become Christian, many non-Jews became Jews. Okay? And we're going to go over that it's really a battle of ideology. It's not bloodline as much as it is ideology. Okay? So in the New Testament, what you're going to read, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you compass sea and land to make one proselyte, one convert. Okay? And when he is made, you make him twofolds, the child of hell, than yourselves. So Jesus here is blasting the Talmudic Jews, the Ben Shapiros, all these crazy rabbis you see on the internet. Here's Jesus blasting them, saying that they will go cross the sea, across land and sea to make one convert and then turn him into a child of hell. So during the first century, Jews were converting. Okay, they were taking over the Roman Empire through conversion until Christianity showed up. And here we read in the book of Acts, the saying pleased the whole multitude, and they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Holy Ghost, and Philip, and Prochorus, and Nicanor, and Timon, and Parmenas, and Nicholas, a proselyte of Antioch. So this is very important that when it mentions this Nicholas, a proselyte of Antioch, this is a convert to Judaism. Okay, that's who's being won over. That's who's here. It's emphasizing that this is a guy who recently, he's converted to Judaism. Okay, and then we're going to see it again here in Acts 13. And when the congregation was broken up, many of the Jews and religious proselytes followed Paul. So now Paul is winning over not just Jews, but non-Jews who had recently become Jews, proselytes, religious proselytes, because Judaism is a converting religion. Okay? When I went back to the synagogue, I was 26, I think. Okay? I didn't grow up with Judaism. I come from a family from the Soviet Union. So we were Russian Jews in Ukraine, and the Soviet Union completely secularized my family. And then when the Soviet Union when Jews were allowed to leave in the 70s to go to Israel, and half of my family stayed secular, and the other half reverted back to Orthodox Judaism. Okay, and so I just happened to come from the branch of my family that stayed secular. They had no desire, in a sense, to return to Orthodox Judaism after living in the Soviet Union. Okay, so really I came from a family of butchers and bakers, Jewish butchers and bakers, and that's it. So now what happens is one branch of my family became Orthodox, and my branch stayed secular, and I didn't even really know what being Jewish was until I was in my 20s. Okay, when I decided to go back to the synagogue. And when I went back to the synagogue and I showed the rabbi, gave him my name, told him who I was, and within a few days he was able to check my family history, and it was pretty scary how the rabbi was able to pinpoint exactly what city my last name came from, and then trace my history to get to me to Canada. He traced like 300-400 years of my family history. But it stops with me. He looked me in the face and said, "You are not a Jew, you are not one of us, but you can convert." I wasn't interested in converting. I didn't really know even what Judaism was about. I thought it was weird. Like, how can you tell me that I come from a very Orthodox family, but because of the Soviet Union and my father marrying a Roman Catholic, it all ends with me, right? And I thought it was weird. And this was my first, this sparked I would say, my study into why is it Moses records everything through the man, but you rabbis record everything through the woman. So it was in this moment when this rabbi told me that I'm not a Jew, that I have to convert. And then, but I told him I'm not interested. I just asked, can I learn from you? Can I just come and learn? And he agreed that twice a week I would go see him and he would teach me private lessons on the Torah, on history, the Torah, and this is how I learned about Judaism. Now, so now what's going to happen is, as I would go to the synagogue, I would see the Aryan converts, the Germans and the Canadians who had converted to Judaism willingly, okay? And they were treated like 100% Jews. And I thought it was interesting that on one hand, I can point at my cousins, and they're all Orthodox Jews. They're all Pharisees, okay? And so I've got legit Pharisee cousins and my aunt and all that stuff, direct family. And then it comes to me and I'm not one of them. But all these Aryans in the synagogue and their children, who are all converts, are 100% Jewish. And I thought it was interesting, right? So this is not in the Old Testament. This is something completely new. So you just understand that blood has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do with blood, okay? Otherwise, I would be a Jew. I'm a 0% Jew. A 0% Jew according to Talmudic Judaism, okay? The Aryan who converts and says a couple magic words and gets circumcised and goes through the conversion process and baptism, or they do like a thing, 100% Jew. 100% Jew, and then all their children through the mother is Jewish, okay? So understand, it's a religion of converts and conversion. Okay, Rabbi Akiva. So we're going to talk about the greatest rabbi in Talmudic Judaism. The Midrash Bereshit Rabbah 64:10 records that Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef, the leading sage of the 2nd century, arguably the greatest rabbi who ever lived, was the son of converts. Despite his humble origin, he became the intellectual architect of the oral law and one of the most revered figures in the Talmud. Okay. His sharp intellect and disciplined reasoning made him the principal architect of the oral law, helping him to shape the Mishnah and interpretive methods that became the foundation of the Talmud. Akiva supported the Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome in 132 to 135, AD, recognizing Bar Kokhba as the hoped-for Messiah. After the rebellion's failure, he was captured, tortured, and executed by the Romans. All right, so understand that, guys. I want you to really grasp that. All these people, oh, you Jew, you dumb kike. Define it. The Jew of Jews, the rabbi of rabbis, is a convert to Judaism. The guy, you know, one of the main guys who wrote the Talmud, started the Talmud, developed the method on interpreting the Talmud. Not a Jew, like not of the tribe of Judah, not what Jesus was. He's a guy who accepted an ideology, the top rabbi of rabbis. Okay, it's a religion, it's an ideology of converts. Okay, that's my point. Okay, it does not matter in the eyes of like rabbinical law. A convert, Akiva, is far more a Jew than Paul, Peter, any of the apostles. Do you understand? You know, that's why Jesus wasn't a Jew by our definition today. So not only when they call him, you worship a Jewish rabbi, how can you call Jesus a rabbi? And what is your definition of Jew? Okay? Because the Talmud redefines what a Jew is completely from the laws of Moses. Okay, and the problem we have today is everyone's mixing the two together. They're not separating it, seeing that the New Testament is a record of Christ fighting these psychotic Jewish rabbis, okay, which Jesus was not. He was not a rabbi, and he was not Jewish by their definition, okay? So the famous Khazaric conversion, okay, the Khazar conversion and halakhic legitimacy, so looking at Jewish law. So in the 8th century AD, the royal house and elites of the Khazar Empire, a Turkish state between the Black and Caspian Sea, formally converted to Judaism after inviting representatives of the three major faiths, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and then debated it before the king. And then, so eventually what happened was King Joseph and Hasdai ibn Shaprut. Shaprut is actually where you get the name Shapiro. This rabbi and King Joseph, sorry guys, I'm just quoting sources, like that's why this got CE and stuff. I'm an AD kind of guy. And going over Maimonides' law and all this stuff, you could see that a whole nation converted to, at least the whole tribe, converted to Judaism. 100% legal according to the laws of the rabbis. It's not Jesus, it's not Moses, it's not the Old Testament. There's nothing in there talking about converting a whole nation to your ideology. Okay? So we've got the top rabbi who's a convert, the New Testament recording conversions, and we've got a nation, and it's all Jewish. They are now Jewish by Jewish law. Jewish law, rabbinic law, not Moses or the Old Testament. Jewish law, halakha law says these guys are 100% Jews. Okay? Emperor Nero. So, what is this? So Rabbi Yosei said that Nero the Caesar, okay, went and shot arrows in all four directions of the world, and all of them fell towards Jerusalem. He said, the Holy One seeks to destroy his house and to wipe his hands on that man, i.e. me. So he fled and converted to Judaism, and from him came Rabbi Meir. Guys, this is the Talmud. Now, it's not about whether this is true or not. You can argue and say this is preposterous. What do you mean Nero ran to Jerusalem after his failed after the revolutions and everyone revolted against him? This is the guy whose name equals 666, the guy persecuting Christians, the Caesar, the sixth Caesar of the book of Revelation. And here the Talmud is saying in his final moments he converted to Judaism and fathered not any rabbi, another extremely popular rabbi. Rabbi Meir also, I think, learned under Akiva, the greatest rabbi ever. So the Jews are claiming that Caesar Nero issued a rabbi, fathered a rabbi, a great rabbi. It has nothing to do with being a descendant of Judah, being a descendant of Israel. That's not what this ideology or religion is about. You could be Emperor Nero. Now, when we come to his wife, and this is a debate, and that is, was she a Jewess? Was she Jewish? I think she was 100%. And the proof is how she was buried. She was not buried in the custom of a Roman. She was buried in the custom of a Jewess, as a convert to Judaism. And both the Talmud and Josephus, it says Pompeia, the wife of Nero, was a God-fearing woman, and she sent gifts to the rabbis, to the sages, okay? She was a big supporter of the rabbis, okay? This identifies Pompeia Sabina, Nero's wife, as a Yirat Shamayim, God-fearing woman, sympathetic to Judaism, sympathetic to the rabbis. Okay, Josephus in Antiquities of the Jews, he corroborates her favor towards the Jews. He's in full agreement with that no one, this was not an unknown thing. Every Jewish encyclopedia I have says the same thing, that Nero was a Jew favorer, and so was his wife. The very beginning of life of Flavius Josephus, he talks about how he was sent to Rome because there was problems in Jerusalem, in Judea. The priests were fighting with King Herod. King Agrippa, all the kings. The Herodian kings had replaced the Hasmoneans, the Levitical kings, and so there was a lot of conflict going on between them. And I think this conflict was actually so ridiculous. This fight started because I think King Agrippa had made a balcony overlooking the temple so that he could see the sacrifices and the ceremonies from his balcony. So he didn't have to go to the temple. He could just go to his balcony and see everything happening. So I think the priests then started to build a wall so that Agrippa couldn't see. They built a wall to block his view, to prevent him from sin. It was something so stupid and childish like this that the priests and the king are now fighting back and forth, and the king throws them all in prison. Josephus has to go to Rome, where I'm pretty sure his boat was destroyed like Paul, and he had to get to Rome, and he had to find his Jewish friend Alatorius, who was friends with Pompeia Sabina, who then went to her husband and said, "Hey, we got to help out we got to help these Jews out. Their priests are in prison because they pissed off Agrippa." So it's kind of like today, where the Jews run and control everything, and I'm going to go to my Jewish actor friend. My friend's a Jewish actor, and he's going to go to Trump for me. "Hey, can you go talk to Melania for me?" Yeah. I'm good friends with them. Don't worry, right? And then I need a favor. Okay, well, I'm going to get you this favor. So a Jewish actor named Alatorius was noted as Josephus' friend who helped him as connection. So you can see that Jews are very connected to Nero, who was big into acting. One of the most amazing things I think about Nero was I truly believe he felt he can control the empire, not through war, not through violence, through entertainment and music. He believed you can control the world through the arts. And when you look at the world today, and you realize that Nero was a degenerate, transgender, homosexual, psychopath, I guess bisexual, he's not far wrong. That we are living in the world he imagined, where arts and entertainment is all you need to control the minds of the masses. Okay? So the Talmud records Nero as a convert fathering one of the greatest rabbis, and then we have his wife, the Talmud also talking about how Pompeia Sabina, his wife, was a convert to Judaism. Okay, I think 100%, guys, when you look at all the evidence. What kind of woman gets buried in the fashion of the Jews if she wasn't one herself? And according to Talmudic Judaism, had Nero not killed her and the baby, again, psychopath, the next Caesar on the throne after Nero would have been Jewish. 100% Jewish according to Talmudic rabbinic law. Not the laws of Moses, the laws of the rabbis. Got it? All right. So Christ is called Rabbi. So let's go over this. Now, there was a man of the Pharisees named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. The same came to Jesus by night and said unto him, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher come from God, for no man can do these miracles that you have done, except God be with him. Here's a Pharisee, another rabbi, addressing Jesus as Rabbi. Christ is not calling himself Rabbi. Other people are calling him this. Then Judas, who betrayed him, answered and said, Rabbi, Master. Okay, it's the same word as Rabbi. I don't know, they just translated it as Master. Is it I? Talking about, who's going to betray Jesus. And I think Judas is, the only apostle who never called Jesus Lord. He referred to Jesus as Rabbi, and Rabbi only. Okay? And when they found him on the other side of the sea, they said unto him, Rabbi, where did you come from? So they're calling him Rabbi. Why are they calling him Rabbi? Did Jesus ask them to call? Did he say, you must call me Rabbi? Rabbi is strictly a title and an office held by oral Torah Jews, the guys Jesus is fighting. Okay? So, Jesus says, guys, it would be totally normal. It's showing you the influence, and we're going to see this later on. It's showing you the influence that these rabbis have during this time. Okay? They have taken over Moses. And we're going to see that right now and right here. Okay, and then spake Jesus to the multitude, to his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. This is going to be very confusing for a lot of people, and we're going to clear it up. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do. But do not you after their works, for they say and do not. Now, is that not schizophrenic? Does that make any sense to you? How on one hand Jesus says, therefore whatsoever they bid you observe and do. But then he says, but you don't do after their works, for they say and do not. Well, which one is it? How do we observe? How do we do that? You're telling us to observe and to do what they do what they say, and then you say don't do after their works. What is it? It's kind of confusing, but it'll make sense, okay? It's right there in the Moses' seat. And we're going to actually go to a Jewish rabbi who translated a version of the book of Matthew to fight Christianity, a rabbi who hated Christianity. We're going to go to him, and he's going to explain to us exactly what this means, okay? So now it continues, for they bind heavy burdens and grievous to be borne, and they lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move one of them with their fingers. Okay, that is the rabbis. They are the last people to do any work. They're going to put all these burdens on you, but they're the last ones that are going to do something. But all their works they do to be seen of men. They make their broad phylacteries, and they enlarge the borders of their garments, and they love the uppermost rooms at feasts and the chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the marketplace and the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. But be you not called Rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all of you are brothers. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven. All right, so here we've got a commandment from Christ, something Christ is telling us to do, and he's telling us not to be called rabbi. Don't be like these guys. Okay, but what about this thing? Whatsoever they bid you observe and do. That's kind of schizophrenic, right? How can we do that? Especially when you actually read all of Matthew 23, it's just one big blast to the Pharisees, okay? Now, very important too, that it mentions the phylacteries. Now, if you were to do a word search on phylacteries, that's these when they put on the leather and the phylactery, the square thing on their head, it's not in the Torah. It's Moses never commanded them to do this. Everything you're seeing is their invention. And the only place you're going to read about phylacteries, these cubes that they put on their head, and all this binding, and these large garments and these prayers that they like to do so they could be seen by men. This is like Jesus is calling these hypocrites out. Nothing they're doing is in the Torah. Guys. So now the seat of Moses. So this is what we have for the seat of Moses. Now when you dig up these old synagogues, and it's very much like this today, okay, the only way this is going to make sense to you, okay, is... And a lot of the things in the New Testament, we're going to go over all this stuff. Guys, the only way you can make sense of the New Testament is by studying the Talmud. Because the Talmud is going to show you the mind of your enemy. It's going to show you what your enemy believes in. And only by knowing their religion can you actually go to the New Testament and make sense of what Jesus is talking about. Okay? Phylacteries, what are you talking about, Jesus? Well, you have to go to the Talmud. You can't go to Moses to learn about phylacteries. You can't. It's not in Moses. It's a new creation. It's a new religion. So you need to go to what they wrote down, the enemies of Christ, the guys who killed Christ, the guy Christ is fighting with all throughout the New Testament. You need to know their religion so you could understand what Christ is condemning and what he's yelling at. Okay, so when we come to Matthew 23, verse 2 to 3, the scribes and Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not you after their works. That sounds really schizophrenic. But again, guys, the only way you can get this is if you know Jewish rituals, if you know how things work in a synagogue. Okay, now we're going to look at Shem Tov. Shem Tov, book of Matthew, is a Jewish rabbi, I think in the 13th or 14th century, who translated the book of Matthew into Hebrew to teach Jews what it says and how to fight Christians. Okay, so this guy is not our friend, but it shows you that he fully understood the proper way to read Matthew 2 to 3 because he understood Jewish customs. Okay, so let's read how the Jewish rabbi translated this so the Jews understood. The Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses. Therefore do what Moses says, but do not do what they say. For they do not do what Moses commanded. And any Orthodox Jew would read this and be outraged because they consider the oral Torah, the laws of the sages and Pharisees, just as important as the laws of Moses, okay? The written Torah. All right, so to make sense of this, I guess the best thing I could do is ask you a question. How many times do you think the Talmud is quoted during an Orthodox Jewish service? How many times will the rabbi quote the Torah, the Talmud, not the Torah, the Talmud, on a Sabbath service? 0. The Talmud is never quoted, not a single time during any Jewish service. It doesn't happen. The only book that is quoted really is the Torah. They're going to bring out the 5 books of Moses, everything. Isn't that interesting? The Talmud is never quoted. The oral law is never quoted, not a single time, ever. Okay? The rabbi at the end of the service might give when everything's over, it's done, and the rabbi gives his personal thoughts about how the week went and people who might need help in the community. He might then quote something from the Talmud. That's it. So, what's happening here is it's mentioning the seat of Moses, Moses' seat. And men are called up, even to this day. You're going to be called up by your Jewish name. Only a Jew can. See, like me, even though I would go to the synagogue, I was forbidden to be called up. It was against the law for me to read from the Torah. I'm not a Jew. Okay? So I would never be called up to read. I was not allowed to read the Torah when I was in synagogue. But the Aryans who converted were called up. Their children were called up. They were allowed to read from it. I wasn't. I was forbidden. Okay? And so the Torah is read from the front of the synagogue. So to sit in Moses' seat, what they're saying, okay, in every synagogue there was a special chair where someone would read the law of Moses, the first 5 books of the Bible. So when Jesus said they sit in Moses' seat, he meant they read and teach from the scriptures that Moses wrote. When they read you God's word, listen to it. Okay? So what he's saying is this. Listen when they read God's law, but do not act like them because they don't follow it themselves. That is what Christ is actually saying, and it's very confusing when people first read this. Because read all of Matthew 23. It is one big, you Pharisees, you Talmudic Jews. I mean, it would become the Talmud. The Talmud didn't exist yet. It was the oral law. You oral Torah Jews, your man-made religion, your vipers, your liars, your thieves, your murderers. Jesus calls them every name in the book in this chapter. And then promises them that destruction will come upon them in their generation, which it would. Okay? So understand that to say Moses' seat. Let's read it again now. The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. This is where the Torah of the laws of Moses are written. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe that observe and do. What? What's read from Moses' seat? The law, the Torah. But do not you after their works. But don't be like them, because do you understand? They've got their oral law. Don't do that, but follow what's read from the seat of Moses. That's what it really says. And the Rabbi, Shem Tov, even though an enemy of the Christians, actually nailed it. Okay, because he understood exactly what they meant by the seat of Moses, by the people sitting in Moses' spot, where only the Torah is read. The Talmud is never, ever, ever read from the seat of Moses. Ever. Okay? So, that is what's going on in this verse. I hope that makes sense to you guys. So, if this ever comes up, which I've had guys bring this up, and you need to understand it from a first century Jewish mind, and you need to understand the synagogue customs for any of this to make sense. All right? So that's what it's saying. Don't listen to the Pharisees, but even though they sit in Moses' seat, listen to them when they read Moses, but then don't do what they say, because they don't even follow Moses themselves. All right. We're going to go to Jesus versus the rabbis. New Testament is about Christ fighting against the religion of the Jews. Now, I'm just going to post this stuff up so you guys have references. I'm going to try my best to try to keep this at an hour. Maybe I'll go over a little bit. But again, the law, you're Jewish or your mother. In the Bible, it says, take a census of the entire congregation of the children of Israel by families, by their fathers' houses. Moses records absolutely everything through the father, never the mother. Okay? In Numbers, okay, the Benjamites here in this chapter, what does it say? That these daughters, they're trying to find men to marry, and they want someone from the same tribe as them. Okay, this assumes that the children inherit their father's tribal identity, not their mother's. So they don't want their Benjamite daughters to marry non-Benjamites, because then another tribal man will inherit that thing, that their inheritance. Okay, and same thing when the Jews were returning from exile, the Jews who could not prove their father's lineage were excluded. Okay, or the Levites, the priests. Okay, and then we come to the Talmud that says, if the child is from a Jewish mother and a non-Jewish father, the child is Jewish. If the mother is not Jewish, the child is not Jewish, even if the father is. So this, exactly like I said, I am not a Jew by their crazy ideology. That's not what this is. It's now a clash between Moses and the rabbis. Okay. Takanot, hand washing. So there is a Jewish prayer that says, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the washing of hands. So the Talmud teaches and codifies the ritual hand washing before eating as rabbinic law, not Torah law. So here we could see that, one who eats bread without washing his hands is like one who has intercourse with a prostitute. That's a little much. Anyone who treats hand washing lightly will be uprooted from the world. The sages say hand washing is a fence around the law to preserve ritual purity. Guys, none of this is in the Torah. This is a rabbinic law. And here they are saying God commanded us to do this. It's not there. But you have to do it. It's not about, is it good or bad to wash your hands? That's not what this is about. It's just, don't say God said to do something when he didn't. It's a Talmudic law. Okay? And of course, in the New Testament, here's Moses. You shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall you diminish aught from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God, which I command you. Okay, so don't add, don't take away is what Moses said. Don't add, don't take away from the law, from the Torah. And what did the Jews do? They added, and then here's Jesus calling them out. Okay, and then the Pharisees and the scribes asked him, why walk not your disciples according to the traditions of the elders, but they eat bread with unwashed hands? Okay, here they are, not following the laws of the Talmud, the oral law, the Pharisees, the Ben Shapiros. And now Jesus condemns them, yells at them. Okay, for laying aside the commandments of God, you hold to the traditions of men. Okay, so full well you reject the commandment of God that you may keep your own tradition. So the problem here, it's not about washing your hands or not, it's about don't invent laws and say God said them. And that's what they're doing over and over again all throughout the New Testament. But you can only know that if you read and study the Talmud. Okay? Not that I'm saying to believe in the Talmud, but I'm saying know your enemy. Know what they believe in. Okay? Do the Jews follow Moses or the rabbis? They follow the rabbis. They don't follow Moses. Torah or Talmud? They follow Talmud. Is Jesus following or attacking Judaism? He's attacking Judaism. Okay? So, doing works. Doing versus working. Okay. So his disciples plucked ears of corn. So here's Jesus. Him and his disciples are in a farming field. They're plucking some corn, some grains to make bread. And they start eating it. And here come the rabbis, the Pharisees. What are you doing? You're working on the Sabbath. Death penalty. No. Okay? It says, you shall not do any work. But it never defines work. Okay, there are no verses in the Torah that prohibit picking grain to eat, forbid healing or speaking to the sick, outlaw medical care on the Sabbath, or ban walking or talking or doing good deeds. Doesn't exist. But they do in the Talmud. Okay, so again, Jesus then brings up parts from the stories from the Old Testament where David goes into the priest's house, takes the showbread, this kind of stuff, and Jesus is schooling them, debunking all their nonsense, that because they're not attacking Jesus and the apostles based on the Torah, they're attacking them based on their newly created religion, the Talmud. Okay, so healing on the Sabbath. So the scribes watched him. Is it lawful on the Sabbath to do so good or to do evil, to save life or destroy it? They were filled with manna. So after Jesus performed a miracle, healed a guy, the rabbis went insane, and now they got to think, what do we do with this guy? Because he's about to ruin everything, all the BS we've started. Our entire religion is about to crumble. Because you got to think, most people can't read or write. They don't know. They're only read portions of the Torah every week. One portion is read every week. These guys have no idea. Guys, it's not like today where we all have copies of the Bible and all of us know how to read and write. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. Okay, so these guys don't know what's right from wrong. It's kind of like not even that long ago going to the church, which sparked the whole Protestant Reformation, because Catholics, the Catholic priests were not teaching the Bible correctly. Okay, which led to revolution. Okay, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. These Jews were not teaching Moses correctly, and it led to a revolution. And that's what Christianity is about. It's about calling out these rabbinic Jews, these Talmudic Jews, on their man-made religious nonsense. Okay? So anyways, this is just about healing, and then the Talmudic laws. It is forbidden to perform, this is from Maimonides, it is forbidden to perform any healing on the Sabbath, even if it involves no prohibited labor. This is the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch isn't the Talmud, but it would definitely be considered an authoritative rabbinic text. Why do Jews wear yarmulkes? Why do Jews dress all weird and crazy and cult-like? It's because the Shulchan Aruch tells them to do that. The Shulchan Aruch is considered, it's virtually the Talmud part 2. It's another... It governs their everyday life for the Orthodox Jew. So one who has a mere discomfort with no danger at all, it is forbidden to perform any healing for him on the Sabbath. So now you see where Jesus says, well, if your ox falls into the ditch, which one of you won't go and save it? Of course you're going to go save your livestock if they need help on the Sabbath. That's not what was considered work. That's the point. The point is the Jews have built law upon law upon law upon law, to the point now you've got a new crazy religion and they dictate every part of your life. Okay? Tithing, so when you're donating and paying taxes and all that stuff. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint, dill, and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. So this is going to fly over 99% of Christians' heads. They're going to read that and go, well, what's he talking about? Well, again, you got to go to the Talmud, okay? And you got to go to the Torah and make a comparison. So what Moses says is, you shall surely tithe all the increase of the seed of the seed of your field, which brings forth year by year. So it mentions grain, wine, oil, and firstborn stock. This is what you're supposed to tithe. Guys, mint, dill, and cumin, vegetable gardens, never made the list. But here these rabbis are, okay? Nowhere in the Torah does it command that a tithe of mint, dill, cumin, and small herbs or spices. But now here comes the rabbis, okay? Here's the law in Deuteronomy. And here's the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer says dill, okay, shevet, is subject to tithing for seed, greens, and stalks. But the sages say only garden cress, okay. The Talmud doesn't care what Moses says. The rabbis have now created a larger tax bracket. They can now come after you for a portion of everything you're doing. Okay? Moses said only this. Rabbis say we don't care, we want more. So when Jesus is fighting with them, arguing over dill and cumin and mint, there's more to the story. They've invented laws that aren't there, and Jesus is calling them out on it. It's a different religion. Okay? So swearing by the temple, again, coming to Matthew 23, when he's blasting these Jews, woe unto you, you blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. You fools and blind. Okay? You guys can read it all yourselves. It's not, I'm just getting to my points. I got to try to shorten this video. If one swears by the temple, now we're looking at the Talmud. So it's like, if I swear by the temple, if I'm making a deal with you, and you're not a student of the oral law, you don't understand the Talmud, and I just make a deal with you, and we swear to each other, and I say, I swear by the temple. You think I'm telling the truth? It's like saying, I swear to God. All right, deal. The Talmud says, if one swears by the temple, it is not binding. But if one swears by him who dwells in the temple, it is binding. Okay? This distinction is explicit. The sanctity of the temple alone doesn't confer legal weight unless it's tied to God himself. So, if you swore by certain things in the temple, the gold in the temple, the menorah, the tabernacle, then you could be legally held to keep your word. But if you just say, I swear by the temple, I swear by the temple, it's nothing. It's a trick. And Jesus is calling them out, and the only place you could figure out what the hell's going on here is if you study the Talmud, the oral law, the enemies of Christ, the rabbis. Okay, the stuff Jesus was fighting and saying these guys are full of it. They're liars. This is not what Moses said. Okay? All right. So divorce, there's another one. Matthew 19, the Pharisees come up to him. Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for any cause? Why are they asking this question? Okay? They're asking this question because during the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD, you had Rabbi Shammai and Rabbi Hillel. You had two Jewish rabbis, Pharisees. One was saying that only for sexual immorality. Rabbi Shammai is actually right. Shammai is quoting Moses. Doesn't mean Shammai is a good guy, but he's right. Moses said only for sexual immorality can you divorce your wife. But here comes Rabbi Hillel, and Rabbi Hillel says even if she burns your food, you can divorce her for any reason. And Rabbi Akiva later, 100 years after Jesus, says even if he finds another woman attractive, you can divorce your wife. So Moses and Jesus say no, you can only get divorced for sexual immoral reasons. If your spouse cheats on you or does something, disgusting sexually, adultery is really the only thing. That's it. But now here's Shammai and Hillel, and here's the New Testament recording that the Jews are confused because one rabbi is saying this, another rabbi invented that. They don't know what Moses said. They're listening to the rabbis, and Jesus comes and clarifies it. Okay? So that's why in Matthew 19, they're asking this question, because these two rabbis during the 1st century BC and the 1st century AD were both saying opposite things. And then Rabbi Akiva comes later. And so guys, Bible says this, Torah says this, and then all these rabbis are saying whatever they want. It's a new religion. Okay? Sabbath travel. Okay. When you get to like Acts 1:12, then they returned to Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is near Jerusalem, a Sabbath day's journey away. What does that mean, a Sabbath day's journey? Go through Moses, it doesn't exist. You're going to go through the whole Old Testament. You have no idea what a Sabbath day's journey is. It's not there. You have to go to the Talmud to understand that a Sabbath day's journey is 2,000 cubits. Okay? 2,000 cubits. Okay? So that's maybe a kilometer. Okay? I guess you could say it's a kilometer. 2,000 cubits. Yeah, I would say it's a kilometer. I think. Let's do the math here. This is a cubit. 2 of these, I guess you could say, is probably, it's about 1.5 feet. So 3 feet's about 1 meter. Yeah, I would say it's about a kilometer. Actually, let me just check that really quick. Yeah, it's a kilometer. Okay. So, nowhere in the Torah. Completely invented. But why is it in the New Testament? Why is it not in the Old Testament? Because it's showing you the culture. The New Testament is recorded during the 1st century. And it's recording very accurate life. And it's actually proving that the New Testament is a trusted historical document, because all these things that are being recorded in the New Testament wouldn't be written until hundreds of years later. Okay? So we've got Bible translations from the 2nd century, early 2nd century, and the Talmud wouldn't even start to be being composed until after the fragments. And yet these guys are recording perfect Jewish traditions that would later, hundreds of years later, be recorded into what would then become the Mishnah, the Talmud. Okay? So it's very interesting that when you're reading them calling Jesus a rabbi, when you're reading a Sabbath day's journey, this is real 1st century history. It is showing you the influence of these oral Talmudic Jews who then later, centuries later, would then write down the Talmud, right? Between the 500 AD, 150, 200 years after Jesus to 500 years after Jesus was when they would start writing all this stuff down. Okay, and here's the New Testament preserving all the nonsense spoken of by these Pharisaic rabbinical Jews. Okay, it makes no sense. You're saying that the Jews created Moses, but then they created this secondary religion, the Talmud, to fight and contradict Moses, and then they created Christianity to fight themselves. It's stupid. No, the Jews are in rebellion against Moses. They didn't create Moses. They created Talmudic Judaism. Okay, the Ben Shapiros. Okay, so that is what. Anyways, this is just showing you where these crazy rabbis invented the 2,000 cubits from. All right. Let's see here. Corban. Okay, so Corban is pretty much like when Jesus here is full well you reject the commandments of God, that you may keep your own tradition. So it says here, for Moses said, honor thy father and thy mother, and whoso curses his father or his mother, let him die the death. But you say, if a man shall say unto his father or mother, it is Corban, that is to say, a gift, by whosoever you might be profited by me, he shall be free. So what he's talking about here is, so what he's doing, what they're doing here is making the word of God of none effect through your traditions. So when you go to the Talmud and you want to understand what korban is, if one says to his father and his mother, benefit from me is forbidden to you as it were a korban, then the vow stands and they can't get help. So let's say that your parents are now old, they need help. You've inherited, you're now running everything, and you've got money and you've got land and you've got stuff, and your parents need help. And you don't want to help them. You're a greedy piece of garbage and you want to keep this stuff yourself. You can call something korban, pretty much dedicate it to something else and swear by God. And now it's like, Mom, Dad, I'd love to help you, but I've already put this aside for this cause, and I made a vow to God, and I can't undo it because it's a swear to God. I swear to God. I didn't swear on the temple, and now I can break it. I swore to God that this money will be used for that. And so here's Jesus blasting the Jews for inventing a law that can get them out of having to help their parents by saying that this wealth that I have, that I should be spending on my parents, I'm not going to. I've already swore to God, made an oath that it's for this. So and this is right out of the Talmud. It's a law in the Talmud. Here's Jesus condemning them for having it. Okay? All right. So anyone who says that understand, very quickly, I'm going to go through this really fast. The Torah is the highest authority in Judaism. Jews will often say that, but understand that you cannot understand the Torah without the Talmud. Okay? So what they're saying is this is the supreme book. The Torah is the supreme book, but you can't read it unless you let another book explain it and override it. Okay? So this is like saying the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, but you're not allowed to read it directly. You must interpret it through 2,000 years of opinions from unelected professors. If you disagree with the interpretation, you're guilty of treason. So the Constitution isn't the supreme authority, the professors are. Okay, I like to use this analogy. Your father left you with a clear set of written instructions, the Torah. Here are your instructions, there's the Torah, there you go. Your father you're not allowed to read them directly. You must ask the babysitter to tell you what he really meant. So now there's a babysitter, the rabbis, and your dad's instructions. And you're now asking to read them. You can't read. Okay? If you disobey the babysitter, you're disobeying your father, right? The babysitter is the one who's in charge, not your father. You have no idea if what the babysitter is telling you is right. Not until your father comes home. Okay? And that's what Jesus is, in a sense. Jesus comes, what are you guys doing? Well, we're telling the kids this, that you said to do this, right? You said to do that, this, that. No, I never said those things. And there's Jesus calling them out. Father never said that. It's like the big brother coming home. What are you doing to my siblings? Why are they doing all this crap? When did my father ever say that? Well, he never did. Oral law passed down. He told me with his lips before he left. But isn't it written in the law that he gave you? No, he told me, you see. And now I'm passing and transmitting what he told me. He didn't write it down. But you have to trust me, right? Guys, this is what they've done. All right. So these are just stories. Again, here's Rabbi Hillel and Shammai once again. And this is just about a convert who said, I only want to learn the written law. And Shammai kicked him away and said, how dare you? I won't even teach you. You have to learn Talmud. You need to learn the oral law. And then Hillel thinks of this plan about teaching him the alphabet and kind of bamboozles him. And it's like, ha, you see, you need me to teach you the alphabet. So you need me to teach you the Torah. The oral Torah is just as important. And it's just nonsense. Okay, so I'm just showing you guys Talmudic laws that show you that the Talmud is, in a sense, more important. The oral law is more important than the written law. Okay, so Talmud Bavel Giten 60b. So this teaches that the covenant was made concerning the oral law. So here we've got Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yohanan going back and forth, arguing that no, it's the written Torah. God said, I wrote for him the majority of my Torah. And then Rabbi Yohanan says that no, according to my mouth. They're just quoting like stupid little things from the Torah and then running 10,000 miles with it, creating and fabricating laws and interpretations. You would have to be popping serious acid, doing serious drugs to take anything these guys say seriously. Okay? So there is no Torah, that which is written, than this written Torah. Even the written Torah is not his. The covenant was made only for the sake of the oral Torah, as it is stated. So it's these rabbis going back and forth, and in the end, the oral Torah is the victor, in the sense. Okay? To deny one who reads scripture but does not study Mishnah, this person is a bore. So it's pretty much one who reads but does not repeats. This is an ignoramus. That's what a boor is. So this is talking about scripture versus Mishnah. Okay? Denying the Talmud, one who says that the oral Torah is not from heaven and denies its transmitters, this is a sectarian, okay, a min, okay, and such a person has no share in the world to come. So if you reject the oral Torah, you have no share in the world to come. All right. One who says all the oral Torah is from heaven except this one detail, this person is a heretic. All right. So this one is, so a guy is explaining to his son, my son, be careful to fulfill the words of these sages like Akiva, Hillel, Shammai, Gamaliel, all these people, all these rabbis, Maimonides, all these rabbis, the rabbis are always right. Be careful to fulfill the words of the sages even more than the words of the Torah. Okay? Whereas with respect to the words of the sages, anyone who transgresses the words of the sages is liable to receive the death penalty, where he explained earlier that the Torah is usually just lashes. So according to this rabbi here, the oral law, the Talmud, is more important. The words of the sages are more important than what Moses said. Okay? And if you don't know the story of Rabbi Eliezer, this is like concrete story. I implore you all, you should all read this story, familiarize yourself with this story, because in this story, Eliezer is a rabbi, and he's arguing with all the rabbis, and pretty much Eliezer's right. It's over some nonsensical issue about an oven, and pretty much what happens is Eliezer's just like, if I am right, let, the trees declare it, and then the trees all creak and bend, and it's a miracle, right? And all the rabbis see it. And the rabbis are like, we don't listen to trees. And then Eliezer's like, well, I invoke the rivers. If I am right and that halakha is with me, let the rivers prove it. And then the rivers start going backwards up the mountain. The rabbis all see this. They talk to each other and go, we don't listen to rivers. So then he says, if I am correct, if halakha, the law is with me, let the walls declare it. And then all of a sudden the walls of the shul, of the synagogue, start, compressing in. And then one of the rabbis yells at the walls and says like, hey, what are you doing? This is a synagogue. Don't do this here. And the rabbis conclude, we don't listen to the walls of the synagogue. So now Eliezer invokes God. And a thunderous voice from heaven comes down and says, here it is here. If halakha is with me, let heaven prove it. And the heaven's voice rang out saying, why do you argue with Rabbi Eliezer? For halakha is always in accordance with him. And then the rabbis say, it is not in heaven, quoting some stupid line from the Talmud. So this is what's his name? Rabbi Yehoshua, meaning that as a result, so Rabbi Yehoshua pretty much just said, it is not in heaven. And that's like the ultimate mic drop. Sorry, God, we don't care what you say. The Torah is on earth. You gave it to us. We're in charge of it, not you. That's what they're saying. And then Eliezer was kicked out. And that was it. He can no longer, even though he was right and everything proved him right, even God himself came down and told these rabbis Eliezer's right. The rabbi said, forget you, God. We're the rabbis, not you. We're in charge here. So this is a story that the rabbis will use to prove that they have authority even over God. They are gods, not God. They are God. Okay? You shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And then later, another rabbi encountered Elijah the prophet. This is mythology. This is fake story, obviously. And he's asking God about, hey, what happened with that whole thing with Eliezer? And God smiled and said, my children have defeated me. My children have defeated me. As if the rabbis know more than God or smarter than God, outwitted God. This is how insane these rabbis are. Okay, so the story is considered a cornerstone of rabbinic theology, illustrating the divine law, that divine law is no longer controlled by heaven, but by human chain of rabbinic authority. Even when it overrides miracles, angels, or the voice of God, it teaches that Judaism, halakha, is decided on earth, not in heaven. Okay, so the rabbis are in charge, and here's just Maimonides saying, and this is like, just to show you that these are laws that they follow, that even if you're a rabbi, even if he says that right is left and left is right, and you think in your heart they are mistaken, do not deviate from their words. So it doesn't matter if the rabbi says 2 + 2 is 9, it's 9. Left is right, right is left, it's true. Whatever the rabbi says, he's right because he is God on earth. He knows more than God. Okay, that is Talmudic Judaism. That is the laws of the rabbi. And this is just if you want to read the whole nonsense of it is not in heaven. I'm just going to try to finish this fast. All right, so my closing statement for this is to call Jesus a rabbi is to misunderstand both history and scripture. The title rabbi belongs to the Pharisaic system that emerged in the last century before the temple's fall, a system built on man-made oral laws and layers of commentary that replaced the commandments of God. Jesus did not belong to that order. He opposed it openly. Throughout the gospel, he exposes the scribes and Pharisees as hypocrites who bind heavy burdens on the people while exalting themselves through titles like rabbi. His mission was not to join them, but to dismantle their authority and restore direct obedience to God. It was this confrontation, his public challenge to their power and their traditions, that led to the rabbinical establishment to seek his death. Christ was not a rabbi, he was anti-rabbi, the divine teacher who tore down the counterfeit religious system that claimed Moses' seat but betrayed Moses' law. All right, guys? So if anyone calls Jesus a Jew, anyone calls Jesus a rabbi, make sure you know how to argue that. Ask them, define a Jew. What do you mean? Who's a Jew? Nero was a Jew. Nero's son's grandson was, or son was a rabbi. Rabbi Akiva, the greatest rabbi who ever lived, was a convert. What is a Jew? It's someone who follows the Talmud, the oral law. That is a Jew. Okay? That's it. It's an ideology. Who is a Christian? Someone who follows and walks after, in Christ's shoes, who picks up their cross and follows Christ. That is a Christian. And a Jew is someone who picks up their phylactery, picks up their prayer shawl, and follows the Pharisees. Follows Donald Trump. All right? Follows Charlie Kirk and all these people. Okay, so that's it, guys. I just wanted to explain that anyone who calls Christ the rabbi is just complete ignorant fool. They have no idea what they're talking about, and always get them define a Jew. Okay? Because the Talmud says one thing, and anyone who claims it from the tribe of Judah today, guys, temple was destroyed 2,000 years ago. There's no birth records. Nobody knows. All right? So we're battling ideology. Entire nations can convert to Judaism. Caesar converted to Judaism. His wife, no problem. All right, so yeah, there's a donation page if anybody wants that. It's in the description. And that's it, guys. I'm going to end it there. And just thank you guys all for watching. Hope you guys learned something. And yeah, God bless you guys. And I hope you guys are well.